Hey everyone, welcome back to the A MOTIV MIND podcast YouTube channel where I, your host Autumn, talk all things mental health, relationships, manifesting and spirituality, self-love, and owning a small business, Kello Collective. At Kello Collective, here on this channel, you can look forward to the video recordings of each podcast episode and shorts with snippets from each video. And be sure to subscribe and turn on your post notifications so that you don't miss the new episodes every Tuesday. And if you prefer to listen to the podcast instead of watching, you can listen on Spotify, which I will leave the link in the description box below for you. Also in the description box, you can find the links to stay connected to the A MOTIV MIND podcast by liking, subscribing, and following on Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify at A MOTIV MIND podcast. And it would mean so much to me if you would support the podcast through my small business, Kello Collective, hand-poured coconut soy candles and products, which you can shop on kellocollective.com. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to Kello Collective on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at Kello Collective. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the video and the podcast. On the last episode, we talked about almost blacking out in TJ Maxx, food anxiety, and the most life-changing blessing that changed the course of my life, moving to my dream state. On this episode, we're going to be diving into the topic of boundaries, finding a new therapist, how to start setting healing goals, and how my experiences in 2022 led me to get serious about finding my passions and starting my business. The first few months after moving to my dream state were extremely exciting and also busy, but this was also a time of significantly less anxiety, which was a first throughout the past few years. My anxiety was suspiciously low, but I think it was because I was finally where I truly wanted to be, and it helped my anxiety kind of disappear a little bit. Also, being so busy with trying to get settled into my new life caused me to distract myself from anxiety that was still there subconsciously. It wasn't until about 3 months into living here that my daily anxiety started to pop back up again, along with some obsessive thoughts and old patterns and behaviors. My health anxiety and fear of passing out started making itself heavily known again, and this was also accompanied with some driving anxiety, which, as we know, I experienced a lot of back in the old state, so it kind of makes sense that it starts popping back up again, but it still wasn't as bad as it was before the move. It was still there, though, and slowly creeping its way back in. But because I was noticing some old anxiety come back, I decided to get back into journaling again because I had taken a break once I moved out here, but I knew that I would most likely need to see a therapist in the coming months to get back to addressing the root of my traumas and anxiety. In the meantime, I tried to soothe my own thoughts and anxiety on my own, but there were some triggering, eye-opening events that happened right after this that were going to force me to focus heavily on myself and my healing journey. It wasn't until Thanksgiving of 2021 where a few things fell apart in my personal life and forced me to finally set some very strong boundaries with some people that were closest to me. While I'm not going to share the specifics of the situation or who exactly was involved, essentially, I had shared some very personal stories about my life, anxiety, and what I was going through mentally with people that I thought that I could trust, and I thought that they wouldn't use any of this information against me. I've had way too many situations in the past where people have used my kindness or vulnerability against me, and they use this to treat me like I'm weak or I'm just easily walked all over, or they just taken advantage of the kindness and things that I've done for them. So I was grateful at that point to have people closest to me that I thought would not do that. But I want to preface this by letting you know that even if you feel like you can trust this person or people with your deepest thoughts, secrets, or fears, or whatever you hold closest to you, sometimes it's best not to share everything with them, even if they are someone that you think would not turn against you, because certain situations can cause people to either flip a switch on you or show their true colors. This situation for me was where this person had used a deep-rooted trauma and source of anxiety for me that I shared with them to step out of line and disrespect me in my own home that they were briefly staying at. Now, I'm by no means a perfect person, and I definitely recognize areas that I need to work on and some of the things in myself that I needed to take a deeper look at. But one thing for me is that if I'm not going to give you a disrespectful energy and allow you to come into my home and treat you with hospitality, along with always trying to make sure that the other people have a safe space to talk and know that they're not going to be judged, then I would expect a level of that same energy given to me. After this situation occurred, it caused me to take a step back and do a reevaluation on how I have allowed people to treat me in the past and in that current time. After that, I made a promise to myself that they and a few other people closest to me would no longer have access to that side of me or receive that energy and love that I had shown them before. This was a person that I would have least expected this energy and comment from, but this was extremely eye-opening to me to show me that while it is not a bad thing to be vulnerable and show people some of the pieces in you that are anxiety-filled, it's very important to set boundaries and not tolerate disrespectful energy that creates more anxiety and unhappiness when you are around them. It is now clear to me that I did not have boundaries set, and I also did not stand up for myself in this situation like I should have. So truly, I was allowing people to walk all over me, but never again after this. There was just so much judgment given to me from these people that I was really sick of it, and I was not going to tolerate this anymore. So what's funny is that a month after this happened, they tried to re-enter my life because I completely cut them off after that and cut contact with them completely. So they would try and send me gifts or try to reach out to me and figure out a way for me to come and see them when they would come into town. But none of that worked. And I did and have remained strong and not allowing those people to re-enter my life in any way, shape, or form. It is so important to set your boundaries and stand firm on not allowing negative people, energy, or manipulative tactics to persuade you to allow people like this to stay in your life and try to impact the work that you have put in on yourself. Do not go outside of your comfort zone or against what you truly want for people like this or anyone who does not respect your boundaries and your wishes. They are not deserving of your time, energy, effort, love, or care. It's their loss to not have you in their life if you are adding value to it. Also, do not allow people to make you feel bad for setting boundaries and separating yourself from a situation that caused you anxiety and unhappiness and made you stray away from the boundaries that you set. I'm sorry, but F that. Personally, if I'm going as far as having to set a strict boundary and permanently cut you out of my life, I'm for damn sure not going to let you back into it just because you're sad that I'm no longer in your life. But aside from this, it's caused me to start looking at something new and paying attention to how people had certain expectations for me. This goes hand in hand with boundaries because I didn't set boundaries for myself, so that let these people know that they could come to me and get everything that they needed and expected me to drop everything for them in return. There was also an issue with, oh, well, you did this for me before, so why aren't you doing this now all of a sudden? These people needed specific energy from me and expected that because that's what I'd shown them before. So when they didn't get it, they retaliated against me. They also looked at me as an extremely anxious person that was lost and took actions based off of my anxiety. And they thought that I couldn't make a decision for myself because my head was so clouded. Well, while my head was very clouded and I was going through one of the darkest times mentally, deep down in my soul and gut, I knew what I wanted, but I just didn't want to accept it. This was in terms of an ongoing relationship in which I will discuss in some later episodes, but also with my career. I knew I wanted to have my own business, but some people around me pressured me to find a 9 to 5 instead and made me feel like my anxiety was the thing that was dictating the direction of my life. Later on, I figured out that was actually my gut trying to tell me all along that what I was truly meant for was something way bigger and different than this. And I was listening to the wrong people, which put a lot of noise in my head and steered me away briefly from my true path. I used my anxiety as an excuse and justified what they told me until I set my boundaries and decided to walk on my own path. But during this time, I was at the very beginning of my healing journey and setting boundaries, so it was very rocky at first. Having to stand my ground and be strong and confident in my delivery of messages and points that I needed to make did not come as naturally to me as I would have liked it to. I'm a very strong person, but I think it takes certain situations and events in your life to really wake up for you to realize your full potential and what you deserve in all different areas and relationship types and find your confidence. I used to think that setting a boundary and standing up for my self-worth was actually me being cocky and overconfident. So I refrained from doing that for multiple reasons. 1, I didn't have the self-love and worth that I have today. 2, I convinced myself that I honestly just wasn't worthy of receiving this energy that I was giving to others, like as if I didn't deserve it being reciprocated. And 3, I didn't want to be viewed as a woman who's full of herself and thinks that she's the shit and that no one can top her. I had to mentally break down a few barriers and beliefs in my mind and work through some realizations of how my relationships were, both romantic and non-romantic. It was very hard for me to accept that the love and energy that I was being given was actually toxic in a lot of ways. Now, these people were not so bad and toxic that they were the worst individuals ever. They had a genuine heart and good intentions with most things, but as humans, we all have things that we need to work on and different sides of us that are maybe not so pretty. And I definitely have my fair share of things to work on and improve, but this still doesn't mean that you should tolerate manipulation, control, anger, or pushback for setting boundaries and removing yourself from an uncomfortable situation. The way that I started to set boundaries was first not responding to texts and calls from these people, then working my way up to verbally making my wishes and firm decisions known by literally having to say, like, I will not tolerate being disrespected, and I'm no longer choosing to have any type of relationship with you. Now, this was a non-romantic situation again, or continue to be around you. I will not talk to you, see you, or have you in my life any further. For full transparency, this took me about 8 months to go from ignoring calls and texts to verbally saying enough is enough. I had already set this boundary in my head, but I struggled with finding the confidence to stand up and say that I am not tolerating this anymore. I'm not going to allow these manipulative tactics in my life, and I'm not going to allow you and your pushback to stray me away from my final decision. Once I was finally able to stand up and say that, I felt so incredibly proud of myself because the work that I did in between that time to get to that point was starting to pay off. I could actually see the changes that I was making in myself and my relationships. The work that I put in on myself was a combination of sitting with myself, starting therapy again, this time cognitive behavioral therapy, and getting a closer relationship with God and going deeper into my faith. Entering into 2022, 2 months after the initial disrespectful situation with these people, there was a lot happening in my living situation and personal mental battle of knowing that I needed to make some tough decisions this year while also needing to get serious about starting a business and finding my passions. There was so much negativity and fear surrounding me at the start of 2022 because there were a lot of endings that had just happened in my personal life. I ended a very long relationship that I was in. I cut off some people closest to me from disrespect and having to set new boundaries, and I still didn't have a clue as to what I enjoyed doing that I could turn into a business. The endings that God put me through, though, were actually there to catapult me into discovering the thing that I really needed the most in all of this, myself. Woo, that's powerful. So before we dive into starting therapy again and finding myself, I'm going to light my Kello Collective oat milk and honey candle, which you can find on kellocollective.com. This candle is a creamy blend of oat milk, honey, vanilla, and notes of wheat. This is a calm yet powerful soothing scent. All right, now that I have lit one of my favorite scents, let's go ahead and get into the second half of this episode. 2022 was a big year of changes and a lot of downs, but this makes sense considering a big piece of angel number 222 is change. But the first 2 months of 2022, I had a lot of inner turmoil and breakdowns because my world as I knew it was shattering. Everything that I once thought I wanted, like to settle down, get into a relationship, have a family, and figure out myself and career later on, was thrown out the window. Because now I saw that while a relationship and a family is a beautiful thing, and I can potentially have that in the future, I cannot give myself to someone else if I don't love myself. And most importantly, I needed to find myself for me. I needed to be able to live my best life, but I have to find that happiness in myself first. So while I was dealing with that mental battle, as you could imagine, my anxiety started to come back very heavily. It was still not as crippling as it was before the move, but it was the worst it had been since I had moved. My driving anxiety was very present, where I experienced the depersonalization feeling as soon as I got in the car. My health anxiety and fear of passing out or dying was very high. I had low self-esteem and felt like my life was going to get even worse. Although I was very happy to be in this new state and was extremely grateful because I was still doing better than I was, but the old patterns and cycles still followed me to the new state, which as they would. You would expect that. But I shoved it down so much that I thought, it's okay, I'm getting better. But I had a lot more work to do. I knew that I needed to change something in myself and my life, or else I was going to be miserable every day. So I decided to try and start a baking business where I would sell chocolate-covered treats and cake pops. I started kicking this idea around and playing around with different molds and recipes about a year prior to this, but I never went fully into it as a business. But I told myself now is the time to try and make this a legit business. So I dived back into baking and I bought lots of chocolate and sprinkles and baking boxes, like all of the different materials and things that I would need. And I was working on a list of what I wanted to sell. But aside from this, I felt in my gut that it was time to revisit looking for a therapist and starting therapy again. So that's what I did. But this time I wanted to look for cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a talking-based therapy. After looking through a few therapists, I landed on one and had my first session. I instantly knew that she was going to be the one to help me because I felt very aligned with her and like our personalities and energies mesh very well, which I feel like is very important to have with a therapist. You need to click with your therapist, and she made me feel like she actually cared about my healing journey. Like it wasn't just about a check. I say this because I had 2 therapists previously where I didn't feel like I clicked with them, and the sessions felt very disingenuous, and I never felt like they were actually there to invest in me and see me heal. If you're looking for a therapist, know that it may take a few different therapists before you finally find the right one. So don't be discouraged if you don't mesh well with one person, because there's plenty of other therapists out there. But in this type of therapy, we revisited my childhood traumas, where my life was at currently, and the different types of anxiety that I was having along with the symptoms. I also set a goal for myself in our first session about what I wanted to overcome the most and what I wanted for myself, not just in therapy, but in life. This was very helpful because it challenged me to get more goal focused and think about who I wanted to be. If you're in the beginning of your healing journey, I ask you to do the same. Sit down in silence and just think, what are your goals for healing your anxiety? Do you have a goal of healing from panic attacks or health anxiety? Do you have a goal to be able to just walk into a store and be alone and shop without being anxious? Whatever your goal is, write it down. And if you have multiple goals, write them all down. Like, don't shy away from writing everything down that you want for yourself. But you do need to choose one and give that priority and put it at the top of your list to focus on. You only need to focus on one goal at a time, or else you're going to overwhelm yourself. Also, maybe it isn't just anxiety that you want to heal from, but maybe this is some traumas or healing from a relationship or anything else that is mental health related. Whatever it is, just write down your goals for all of those different areas. And after you write down your goals for healing, start thinking about personal goals for yourself outside of mental health and your life. I recommend trying to think about this from the perspective of your future self. Your future self is the version of you that is already living the life that you're working to create. That version of you is already the happiest, peaceful, most confident version of yourself, and they already have the career or lifestyle that you desire for yourself. They're in that dream location, the dream house, the relationship you want to be in, or maybe you want to be single, but literally anything that you desire, your future self has. So, what does that look like for you? Outside of the material items, though, what does your self-love look like? Your self-worth? Who are you? Do you desire to learn new skills, gain more education? Do you have strong boundaries? And are you making sure that you're not settling for anything less than what you deserve? Are you truly happy, at peace, and living your best life and the best version of you? Just really sit down and dissect the different areas of your life and yourself that you want to change. Focus and figure out what you desire in life. And after you do that, write down these goals and desires on a piece of paper. This helps because I feel like you really, really focus on what you're writing when you actually physically write it down. But you can also put these in your phone, like in the notes section. I do this all the time. But setting goals, or at least writing down what you desire, will help you begin to get aligned with those key items. But it's what you do after that, the intention you set and the changes that you make daily that will actually make this happen for yourself. This is what therapy opened my eyes to. So I set my goals and found more of my desires to have a new direction to move forward in. I do want to mention, though, that you will find new desires and redefine the ones that you originally had once you get deeper into your healing journey and self-discovery. I had very large goals in the beginning of my healing journey that are not as specific as they are now, but once again, you have to go through this journey a little bit to then refine the goals and the specific desires that you want in your life in all the different areas. Now I'm able to confidently say that I know what I desire for myself, my business and other future business ventures, my future relationship, and, most importantly, me and my family and my values. Seeing so much of what I don't want in life and relationships also helps shape me into who I am today, but what I want in my life. And therapy was just a start for me. Outside of therapy sessions, I still journaled and sat with myself in silence daily if I could. I would sit and think of how certain life events and traumas are manifesting into the physical symptoms and how the two could be related. I would then go into my next therapy session and we would discuss it. Then the therapist would obviously provide insight on that topic and also offer advice or share an eye-opening thought or question that made me start to look at the trauma or symptom differently. I feel like it's very helpful to have a different perspective and viewpoints on your anxiety and healing in good ways, though, with trustworthy people, because we can sometimes have a very one-sided way of looking at things and thinking about stuff that you need a different, fresh perspective to help you maybe steer yourself to a different direction and thinking pattern. But outside of therapy, I was blessed with a new friendship with someone that was very genuine, thoughtful, and caring, and she challenged my way of thinking. She helped keep me accountable in my actions and goals, and she was very much like me in a lot of ways, but especially with her life goals and entrepreneurial dreams. God placed her in my life at the most perfect time. I've prayed for a friendship like this for years, and I'm extremely grateful to have her in my life. Having someone keep you accountable is huge because it wakes you up to look internally and realize, like, damn, am I even keeping myself accountable, or am I just being lazy and procrastinating or doubting my own dreams? Now, it's not someone's responsibility to keep you accountable and have you want to pursue your healing and goals, but it's very beneficial to have someone like that around you. But you have to be the one to actually take the actions and want it for yourself. So, between therapy, my new friend, and doing work on myself in silence, I was starting to see how things could improve for me, and I wasn't stuck in this mental funk forever. In April of 2022, I was about a month into therapy and was still working on developing the baking business, but it didn't feel right. The baking business was just not as exciting to me anymore, and I didn't feel like I wanted to do this 24/7. Like, it didn't feel like I wanted to sit here and have to develop a whole business based on this and actually have a full passion in it to keep going. And my new friend could also see that. She shared a harsh reality with me and saying that if I really, really wanted to make this into a business, then I would have already spent way more of my time creating this business and getting a solid plan as to where I wanted to take this. And I would have been way farther in this than where I was in the process currently. But she was right. It was harsh because I never had anyone who really confronted me and held me accountable. So at first, I was taken back. But after putting some more thought into it, I realized that she was right. I loved baking, but it should stay as a hobby and do it for fun, not as a business. So I tossed out my baking business idea and started from scratch thinking about what the heck I wanted to do now. Do you see the pattern? I kept starting something and not finishing it. I would get halfway through and then stop because I felt like I wasn't into it anymore and that it just didn't feel aligned with who I was and what I wanted to do in my life. This was such an annoying pattern in myself, and I felt like such a failure that I was always flip-flopping between new ideas, businesses, school. What I viewed as indecisive, which it partially was, of course, was actually me having to go through trial and error and go through different types of potential passions to find my true path. You need to go through different paths or passions to find the right one for you. And you are not a failure for needing to go through that multiple times. Like, it's okay. Sometimes we just have to see what we like and don't. How do we know if something isn't for us if we never try? So don't be so hard on yourself, but also don't give up on finding your passions just because one didn't work out. It's so worth it once you find the right one or ones that you enjoy. After getting this harsh reality of being at another dead end of a business idea, I knew that I needed to take some time to reevaluate my next move. So I went and visited my family back in the state that I moved from. And this trip woke up the ambition and determination in me, which we're going to dive into next Tuesday. I hope to see you back here then, where we will dive into more of this family trip and something huge, the start of Kello Collective. I will also be diving deeper into angel numbers and more healing and advice and tips. See you then. Hey, I'm so glad that you made it to the end of this episode, and I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to comment down below your favorite part of this episode, or maybe share something about your own journey. And make sure to check out the previous episodes of the A Motive Mind podcast that you may have missed. And don't forget to listen on Spotify if you prefer to listen to the audio recordings of this episode. And let's stay connected on Instagram and Facebook by liking, following, and sharing at A Motive Mind Podcast and my small business, Kello Collective. You can find all of the links down below in the description box, and it would mean so much to me for you guys to check them out. All right, well, I will see you guys on the next episode. And remember, together, let's create a motive mind.